Kevin Sprague, and I'm the co-chair of Berkshire Creative and the owner and creative director of Studio 2, our design and marketing agency located here in the Berkshires. Here's an outline of my talk. It's relatively ambitious, so I'm going to move very quickly, but I invite, obviously, questions after we're done. I'm going to address the question of how did we build communications protocols for Berkshire Creative? Why did we do it? What are what parts of the system? Why does it work? How do we measure results? And how can you bring this to your community? So this is me. I'm an accordion enthusiast, and you're just really lucky because this time I didn't bring it. But if you go on YouTube, you can see the times when I did. And I always tell people the accordion is a great trick-or-treat instrument because at first everybody thinks, oh, that's so much fun, what a great sound. And then ever so slowly they're like, oh God. Anyway, I run a graphic design and branding agency, so we handle many of the local cultural organizations, Shakespeare and Company, Barrington Stage, Edith Wharton Restoration, those kinds of things. We do graphics, we do design, we do logos, we do websites. And a core precept of my discussion today is don't let design get in the way of communicating. So as a designer, I want to tell you that if your logo, if questions about the color of your logo have you stuck in committee, you have failed to communicate. And you should get over it and choose a color. I'll choose one for you, red. Red's fine. Okay? So here's my fundamental principles for how to build an effective communication strategy for a community organization. Don't let your brand get in the way of your message. I'll elaborate on that in a little bit. I'd like to talk about core fluency. The internet is no longer a technology, it's a set of languages. And fluency is relatively easy to come by, but I often tell people, if you had to do business in China next year, I mean, you had to do it, and the only choice you have is either hire someone who knows Chinese or learn Chinese yourself. Well, it's a really good idea to learn Chinese. And the internet's the same way, except it's a lot easier. Fluency is easy to come by, but it's something to focus on. Get rid of friction. If you choose communication strategies or protocols or platforms that get in your way, you can't update your blog, you can't post a picture, you can't do something because your web designer put some blockades in the way and said, well, it has to be 300 pixels by 400 pixels, it has to be RGB, you're like, oh God, I just wanted to put up this thing about this thing we were doing, and now I'm stuck here at 3 o'clock in the morning trying to update this damn thing. That's friction. Friction sucks, get rid of it. Same with technology, don't let it get in the way. And for those of you who are experienced institutional administrators who have gone through hundreds and thousands of mailings and development mailings and brochures and annual reports and those kinds of things, the internet is a great place for typos. The internet is fine. You can have typos on the internet and nobody actually cares because we all know you can go back in and fix them. The internet is not print, so it's going to be messy, and messiness is actually a core value you want to embrace. So, what do we use for Berkshire Creative? The reason I'm pointing to Berkshire Creative's communications as an example is that it's been extremely effective in an extremely short period of time and corresponds to these principles. The components of the system are the core website at berkshirecreative.org, multiple subsites, various kinds of e-blast systems, Facebook, Twitter, surveys, Google Analytics, and shared documents, as well as other things that Helena and Rebecca at Berkshire Creative introduce all the time and don't tell me about when I don't need to know. So, but the point is that every one of these things, when people talk about these different emerging platforms or mature platforms, they're just tools towards a means. They're just tools towards a means, and you would do well to embrace them. So this is the website for Berkshire Creative, and I want to just point out that design doesn't matter here, okay? Our logo is not even up in our left corner because we never got around to it. or I was too lazy, or it was a problem. I don't remember. Actually, it's SEO friendlier to have your logo be readable type up there, so that's why we left it. The look of this thing is a template in WordPress, and I'll talk about that shortly. But ultimately, it's about getting the right information in front of people in the right way. These are some of the subsites that we've developed. There's the Berkshire Gallery Guide, the Field Trip Directory. We have separate websites for Bar Camp. We have separate websites for other things. I can't remember. We basically stuck with the same template because we all know how to use it. And at any moment when Rebecca or Helena come up with some new initiative and they say, hey, we need a new website, it really can take us about an hour to get a new one up and get it rolling because we've got a good format. Other elements of our communications, e-blasts, Twitter, Facebook, you're familiar with all these things. We try to stay on message there. The choice of voice is important in those spaces. So why do this? Why have a communication strategy? Why communicate at all? Obviously, we're trying to build constituency. We're trying to build points of contact. We're trying to communicate about what Berkshire Creative's doing and connect people to the events, the opportunities, the initiatives that are out there for them. And we need to pursue our mission. Our mission is to spark collaboration between organizations and individuals to create jobs. Jobs, jobs, jobs. This is all about, if I can show somebody out there that Berkshire Creative created a job by bringing two people together, by bringing an organization into the room with somebody else and saying, oh, you're the person we've been looking for, why don't you come work for us? We have been successful, that's our goal. And so we stay on mission. Every time we look at our communications protocol, we say to ourselves, will this help people connect? Will it help them get a job? And really, the other part of the why is we have one paid staff member, one semi-paid volunteer staff member. That's it, and we need to make sure that this gets maximized and is efficient and doesn't take up too much time. So the other why is really the metrics. Our success is measured by these things. How many visits we get, how many page views we get, how many friends we have, how often we're communicating. My total cost for 2010 line item here is true. I mean, there were a lot of people who put a lot of time into this, but its actual cost to the organization was nothing. And I'm guessing sort of about 4 or 5 hours is what we spend on it weekly, maybe a little bit more. So what are the components of the system? This gets kind of into the nitty-gritty. WordPress is a content management system that we use. We use everything else as off the shelf, if you will. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Main Street Mail, MailChimp, Constant Contact, those are all good e-blast systems. Probably many of you use Constant Contact. I'm a big fan of MailChimp because they have a funny monkey. Sorry. Survey Monkey, which I don't, they also have funny monkeys, but and we use a lot of Google applications to coordinate meetings and share documents. And I'm going to go into WordPress a little bit more. Who here knows what WordPress is? Yay, excellent. Who here has actually busted their chops, updating their website in WordPress? Okay, good. So you know the benefits. So WordPress is open source and community supported. In other words, it's not owned by anybody. It's not going out of business. You don't have to pay a licensing fee, and it's well understood. There's a lot of growing fluency in our communities about what WordPress is. You can usually find somebody who's coming out of college or somebody. They already have their blog. They've already been in WordPress. They already know their way around this. It's a fundamental technology that's emerging or has emerged. 13% of the top websites in the world, I'm not quite sure what that meant by that, but this was a statistic I found, are WordPress based. It uses a MySQL database, which is an open source database engine. It's important to understand that there's a database behind WordPress. A lot of people don't realize that, in that everything you put up on your WordPress site is actually basically in a table somewhere on a server, and that table looks a lot like an Excel spreadsheet. What that means is that once you've created that data, you've thought about how it should be organized, you've just created an asset that has a long-term viability because it can be ported reskinned or sourced into other systems, because really what you're dealing with is a spreadsheet, not some mysterious closed system where you can't kind of drill down to its actual function. WordPress is a blog. Blog is a 4-letter word for some people. They say, well, it's a blog, that's not for professionals. A blog just means, blogs simply refer to the idea that you create discrete moments of information that are time-stamped. In other words, I create a post, and if I create a new post, it pushes the other post down. You can call that a blog. If blog bothers you, you can call it something else. But blog is the terminology by which we define time-stamped discrete moments of information. And of course, you have user management of all the content. For those of you who don't use WordPress, this is the dashboard. This is what you see when you log in as a user from your website. So if I log in from Berkshire Creative, this is what I see. We have 962 posts, 31 pages, 36 categories, 720 tags. Those posts, pages, categories, and tags are what define and allow you to find the content in that database. The designation of categories and the organization of information by using a category function is core to how WordPress functions, but it's also core to how you should think about your organization's communications. So here's a typical post that's been made. You have a headline, you have copy, it's editable as if you were in a word processor. You can also access the HTML, the underlying code there. And here's categories that this post belongs to: features, news bulletins, in the news, and press. Categories can belong to multiple categories and many, many tags. Categories can be reassigned. So for instance, we might say, oh, actually it's turned out to not be, we no longer want to show it in the news section, so we'll just unclick that category, or we'll archive it by reassigning it sometime in the future. Categories are the secret sauce of WordPress. A lot of people don't really approach the question of how do I organize my content over time. So fundamental to Berkshire Creative is everything that goes up on Berkshire Creative's website is a blog post. Every post is categories. All the categories are sorted into intelligent silos. In other words, you can go to news and see news. You go to jobs and see jobs. You go to see resources and you'll see resources, and we can break them down into for-profit and non-profit resources simply by assigning those categories, not by any really complex web design architecture. WordPress runs on a theme framework, and there are thousands, if not millions, of available themes in the world. There are premium ones you can pay for, there are free ones you can go find. These themes are designed they're basically a framework to lay out the information that WordPress has. And I encourage you, if you're thinking about how you want your site to look, how you want it to behave, to go and look at some of these theme vendors. I use a couple of, one site that I refer people to as Woo Themes. It's a premium vendor. In other words, you can subscribe or buy a theme. It costs about $150, which is not very much. Subscriptions are like $30 a month or something, $15. And that gives you access to literally 100 different theme frameworks and a whole bunch of incredibly expensive programming. I mean, if you went and set out to build one of these themes and all the programming that went behind it would cost you $100,000, and they're going to sell it to you for $100. So these are a fantastic place to start thinking about how your website's structured and designed. Even if you're not a website designer, you can start looking at it and say, well, I like the way that one looks, and I like the way this is sorting the data because it applies to how I see my organization being presented. So it's a great visual tool. Plugins. WordPress uses a plugin architecture. These are sub-programs written by independent programmers. They're usually available for free or for a small donation, and they're incredible. You can't think of something you can't find a plugin for. You know, oh, I want to embed my Flickr feed. Oh, I want to have a web store. Oh, I want to have a calendaring function. Guess what? There's a plugin for that. It's exactly like saying there's an app for that. Plugins are fantastic. They're worth looking at. Here, for instance, here's Berkshire Creative's website on my iPhone, on the left and the right. These are two different views of how it looks if you were to go there on your phone right now. Is this because we designed a mobile app and spent $20,000 paying some programmers in Hong Kong? No, I installed a free plugin and I turned it on. Okay? And it reconfigures all of the data into a mobile-friendly view. Powerful stuff, right at your fingertips, and easily accessible. Widgets. Widgets are these little other sub-programs that go in the sidebars on most WordPress sites. So you can embed your Facebook page, your Flickr feed. We have these little three-dimensional tag cloud, which we just like because it spins around and it's pretty. So I went back to my fundamental principles because the whole basis of how our system works came from this idea of just build it, get it out there, don't let your brain get in the way, don't let don't let things hold you back, don't build in systems that are that have a lot of friction in them. And this is the second part of sort of fundamental principles, which is also important. The organization itself needs to grasp that change is here. The internet, we all think of ourselves as conversant. It's not going away, it's getting bigger, and it's moving faster. The Facebook of today is not the Facebook of tomorrow, and it may not even exist in a year. So we're going to have to move nimbly as organizations to say, hey, I just heard about this thing over here that's emerging. It looks really interesting, and we could probably jump onto and try out. You should. You have to keep moving. You can't stop because the tools are evolving more quickly than any other tool or technology has ever evolved in history. And you might think, oh God, this is totally overwhelming. I can't possibly do this. But if you come back to the idea of fluency, and you come back to the idea that your culture as an organization embraces fluency, invests in it, trains for it, hires for it, you actually will find that there's a kind of an opening up, what I call an aha moment, where you can start moving fluidly in these spaces instead of fighting them. So it's kind of an abstract goal. I don't know how else to state it, but what you're really seeking in this process of trying to build a dynamic communications strategy is a degree of fluidity in moving from one thing to another. You want to post your videos up on your website. Well, go to YouTube, obviously, right? Well, you don't like the little YouTube logo in the bottom right corner of your screen? Guess what? I don't care. It's really important that you don't care too, because YouTube's got 100 million users who are going to potentially trip across your video, whereas some other function that you might custom code won't. We had an example of this. Shakespeare and Company back, maybe 6 or 7 years ago, we started putting videos up on their website, and we were using a proprietary. They wanted to use a proprietary video coding engine to put it up, and so we put them up, and there was all these problems. Some people could see it and couldn't hear it. Some people could hear it, couldn't see it. It wouldn't work, It was just when YouTube started. I said, I'll try this YouTube thing out. I threw the video up on YouTube, embedded it back on their site. They complained about the logo. I took it down, and a year later, I was on the site, and I noticed that the video that we had embedded had been watched 13 times on their website. I thought, okay. And I went to YouTube, and it had been watched 27,000 times. So, and I came back to them, I said, which would you prefer, the logo or the 27,000 people who saw this training video? And they're like, oh yeah, let's go that. That would be a good idea. So you just have to give up some stuff. Access. Your organization will not thrive here unless you give people the keys and you let them make mistakes. Obviously, it's a good idea to give people parameters. Don't update the Facebook page with those party pictures from last night, for our organization. But on the other hand, you really have to just open it up so everybody gets the opportunity, if they want to have a voice. We're here talking about a creative economy. People thrive when they're given the tools of creativity, when they're given the opportunity to express themselves. That's something that we all like to do, and this is a great platform for doing that. So if you can give somebody a platform and some tools, and go ahead. harm is there? You'll often find that by opening up that access, you really create a thriving culture. Okay, so here's a couple other principles. Open source. If any of you right now are in a design process for a website, and the people you're talking to are talking about proprietary content management systems built in, Nuke.php or Ruby on Rails or something, or no, this can't possibly be built in WordPress because it can't possibly handle the functions that we have because this is such a complicated site. They are BSing you, and they don't know what they're doing, and you should get somebody else. So it's just true. There are many things that you can do in those other platforms. They're great for certain people, but the wheel has turned, people. The wheel has turned, and it's turned in the last 18 months. I mean, I was building content systems on a custom platform 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, and now I really am pissed off at myself that I did that because I didn't know any better, because now I have to go back and rebuild all those sites in WordPress. To the people who say, oh, it can't possibly handle the scope of our site, we've built a number of significant institutional sites in it with thousands of pages, dozens of users, every possible iteration of content, and they hold up just great. Have not yet seen a single instance of this being an issue. And the other thing is, you can refresh these things. You can reskin them overnight. Choose a new theme, tweak it a little bit, put it up there, and suddenly you've got a fresh new look without having to touch that database of content underneath. So those are some other ideas that I am focused on. So results, metrics, measure. The great thing about the web is your metrics are perfect. So pay attention to them. You can set up, who here has their analytics for their website set up to email to them every week? Yeah, okay. For the rest of you, go to your analytics and have it emailed to you. It'll send you a nice little report and tell you that 13 people visited this page and 14 people used that search term. Great stuff, because you start paying attention to it. You don't have to be a web genius, you just have to look at it, and you'll start noticing the trends and noticing the results. Facebook friends matter. Facebook friends matter. For organizations who are like, well, we're not so sure about Facebook, we kind of play around with it or everything. Facebook is the biggest freaking thing on the planet, okay? 500 million users, and in fact, shortly going to outstrip Google for the total number of people who visit it in a day. You don't get to ignore it. You don't. And I had this conversation a couple of weeks ago with some people who were like, well, we're not really sure who we should accept as friends because we don't really know them. And are they really our friends? And unfortunately, the semantics of this whole place is really broken, because Facebook was, as we all know, because we all saw the social network, Facebook was written by, a guy in his dorm room and who never really actually thought about it very hard about it. And these aren't friends, these are connections, these are points of contact. As an institution, guess what you want? All of them, all right? So any strategy, you want to put strategies in place to grow that network. And the results that we've had have been profound. We've been able to, in 3 years, build a communications profile for Berkshire Creative that reaches more people, more quickly, more efficiently, and more cost-effectively in the Berkshires than any other organization that I can put my finger on. And we did it for nothing. Zippity, okay? And that's interesting, and the reason we were able to do that is that we broke all the rules about design, and about process, and about committees, and about logo coloring. We just went ahead and did it, and it's working. And now we're seeing a lot of other people are interested in those results. So here's Berkshire Creative's statistics. Obviously there's organizations in the Berkshires that have much better statistics. Mass Mocha probably gets 5 times as many visitors as we do. But on a visitor per dollar spent basis, our visitors cost us absolutely nothing. And we do no other marketing or advertising or communications. The last time we did a print piece, I think, was for our Christmas party. We sent it to like 200 people. That's the only one we do every year. So that number matters, 2,415 people like Berkshire Creative. We'd like that to be 5,000 people this time next year. Here's our growth in 2009, 2010. the white bar is 2009, the gray bar is 2010, so we've basically doubled our results in the last year. I'm hoping to do that again. And this is why we do it. Good communications build communities. That's, you know. Okay, so.
Hi, we're at 11 minutes, so whenever you want to wrap it up.
Okay. Thank you. I will just about wrap it up. So how can you build it? Focus your resources on communications, not so much on brand and design. Let your form follow function. In other words, figure out what you want to communicate and let that be what goes on the top of the page, as opposed to somebody else's idea. Follow the path of least resistance. If you're a small organization, you find this all daunting, just set up a Facebook page. There is absolutely no reason why some organizations can't manage their entire web presence on Facebook at this point. Eliminate committee approval in favor of message-driven protocols. In other words, mission-driven message protocols. In other words, if it meets the mission, you can test your message against the mission on a daily basis, and it says yes or no. If it says yes, it goes up. If it says no, it doesn't. Measure and report your statistics, and look for talent in your community who can help you out. So that's it.